Hey, it's Pop and Peeps, Deflation787 here today, yet again, to talk about Pokebilities. It is the OM of the month again, and the last time I talked about Pokebilities, it was quite different. So, let me just show you. Okay, the last time that Pokebilities was the OM, Fairmosa was, for one, Fairmosa was legal. So, and now when I click validate here, Fairmosa is banned, Fairmosa's item King's Rock is banned, Conkeldurr is banned, and Dracozolt is banned. Four extremely major changes, or some people could argue, one minor change and three major changes to the Pokebilities metagame. Now, Fairmosa was banned exactly the day before Pokebilities came back as OM of the month, thanks to a lot of people, such as myself, pushing for Fairmosa to be banned because of its chokehold on the metagame due to its coverage, due to its raw power, plus the coverage it has covering every single type that is resistant to both fighting and bug at the same time, not to mention its ability to turn anything into momentum either way with U-turn, and the only Pokemon that is not hit, the only Pokemon that is resistant to both of its stabs that is not hit super effectively by any of its coverage being Moltres, which can just get U-turned out on, especially if Mosa has protective pads. So, the chokehold that Fairmosa put on the metagame made a lot of people advocate for it to be banned, such as myself, and our efforts ended up successful. Okay. Now, let's talk about Conkeldurr. Conkeldurr, as you guys know if you've seen my channel, is a Pokemon that I've wanted to be banned for a while. And I think I was the first person to truly see this, but in the past few weeks leading up to Conkeldurr's ban, I think that there were a lot more people who truly started to see how overwhelming Conk was for the metagame. In a meta where it only has one check, and that one check can't even constantly reliably stave it off due to its own lack of reliable recovery, having to rely on Pain Split, Protect plus Black Sludge, and Rest, along with getting 3 code by Facade, especially after hazards, which makes Conkeldurr not even care about neutralizing gas. Even though it gets its guts taken away, it still has that 140 power Facade, and that's still going to 3-co Galarian Weezing even after the Black Sludge, unless you use Protect on one of those turns. However, with the constant chip damage, because Galarian Weezing was not just used for Conkeldurr, not just used for Dracozolt, because yes, it also was used for Dracozolt, but there are other things as well, like Clefable, like Hippowdon, which can't touch it. There are multiple things that Galarian Weezing has a great time staving off, or that Galarian Weezing is supposed to stave off, not have a great time staving off, but there are several things that Galarian Weezing is supposed to check throughout a game, and due to the fact that it gets constantly worn down by hazards and chip damage, struggling to recover its HP without something like predicting a switch into a full health Pokemon and using Pain Split or something, that can make it extremely difficult to recover HP with Galarian Weezing, making it easier to wear down. And because of how easy it is to wear down, it makes it able to check Conkeldurr less, which is which is a huge issue, especially considering it is the only Pokemon that does not get 2-code by Conkeldurr. And because of this, I have seen Conkeldurr as too overwhelming for the meta for a while, especially because its coverage means that any Pokemon that can wall one set probably will not wall another. So it makes scouting an absolute necessity when trying to defeat a Conkeldurr. The most basic set is Drain Punch, Knock Punch, Ice Punch, and Thunder Punch. But people change that up to fit what their team needs. Like, a lot of Conkeldurrs put Poison Jab to smack a Clefable on the switch and get rid of the Clefable. A lot of Conkeldurrs run knockoff for the Slow Twins, the Galarian Slow Twins, the Lotties, Reuniclus, and just overall utility. A lot of Conkeldurrs run Facade just to get that nice hit on Galarian Weezing, even if it is forcing you out. You will always be required to scout out Conk to make sure you have the right Pokemon to check it, which is just simply uncompetitive and unhealthy. And because of that, myself and several other people believed that Conk was too overwhelming for the metagame and was deserving of a ban. Now, thankfully, through some discussion, I don't know what they're not mods of the metagame, but it's similar to moderators, and they have made the decision to do what the community wanted and ban Conkeldurr, but in the same hot patch also banned two other things, being King's Rock and Dracozolt. Now, let me talk about Dracozolt first. Now, Dracozolt has one reliable counter, being Hippowdon. It can reliably stave off Dracozolt's hits. It does not get 2-code if it is fully physically defensive and can repeatedly spam Slack Off until the Dracozolt misses, which will be likely even if it is running Wide Lens, because even 90 accuracy or even 88 accuracy isn't the best. Not to mention, in order to 3-co Hippowdon, Dracozolt needs to run Outrage, which lets you switch into a Fairy type. So yes, Dracozolt does have one counter, but no other true counters. Some argue Galarian Weezing, but at the same time, back to bring my point back up that I did, Galarian Weezing gets chipped down to an extraordinary degree, both by taking small attacks and any passive or residual damage that comes its way, with while simultaneously having an extremely difficult time healing off that damage, meaning that... oh wait, actually... Wait, never mind, it is still 3-co, but... After hazards and repeated chip damage over the course of a game, Galarian Weezing is no longer able to counter a Dracozolt like it would be able to at full HP, meaning that your only option is Hippowdon. And while yes, Hippowdon is great overall, and just like how Galarian Weezing is great overall, it doesn't... The simple fact that you're forced to run one specific Pokemon to deal with Dracozolt, the fact that you're forced to bring one specific Pokemon only to deal with one other Pokemon in the metagame, that is uncompetitive. That is unhealthy in a metagame. when a Pokemon has such a stranglehold on the metagame that you are forced to have one or two specific Pokemon on every team just to deal with it, that is over-centralizing. And because of that, several people, for even longer than Conkeldurr, have believed Dracozolt to be deserving of a ban, and thankfully it did get banned. Now, let's discuss the final ban, King's Rock. If you will see here, give me 1 second. If you'll see here, when I click validate, it says Cinccino's item King's Rock is banned. Now, King's Rock wasn't banned because it was completely over-centralizing, because the only Pokemon that can reliably run it are Pokemon with Skill Link, which currently only has 2 fully evolved legal users in Cloyster and Cinccino. Cinccino already is one of the, not stronger, but one of the more common offensive threats, and giving it King's Rock with a 41% chance to flinch on 3 of its 4 possible multi-hit moves and a 27% chance to hit on the other can make it really annoying, because otherwise counters and checks could just crumble to it. And the problem isn't RNG itself, because, like, do I think the move Thunder, for example, should be banned? It has a 30% chance to paralyze. Doesn't that mean that it has RNG connected to it as well? And it has a 70% chance to miss. Isn't that RNG? Yes, that is RNG, but the thing about items like King's Rock, Bright Powder, Quick Claw, is that they allow the player to make it to where the RNG is more in their favor than it would be otherwise. And that is the issue. Letting players have some sort of control over their own RNG is what is uncompetitive, and that is why most people believe that King's Rock should be banned in this metagame, especially with Cinccino's prominence. And I know I just said especially, but especially at the lower level of play, where people are just trying to use the cool new Pokemon that get a ton of buffs from the abilities. So, because of Cinccino's usage, it has made a lot of people frustrated at King's Rock, whereas otherwise, I'm not sure if they would be. But do I think the King's Rock was a good ban? Personally, yes. Now, RNG itself isn't a bad thing, but when you let the player take the RNG into their own hands, that is when it becomes uncompetitive and unhealthy in a metagame, in my humble opinion. And because of that, I do support the King's Rock ban. So, we just talked about 4 bans. We talked about the Pheromosa ban. We talked about the Conkeldurr ban. We talked about the Dracozolt ban. And we talked about the King's Rock ban. So, after all of these things were banned, what is the metagame looking like right now? Well, currently, as would be expected, bulky offense teams have taken a hit, and sand teams have nearly completely faded away. Because when it comes to bulky offense, the main reason to use it tied back into Conkeldurr, because of its ability to restore its own health while hitting extremely hard with the Guts boosted or just normal Drain Punch that is boosted by Iron Fist. It meant that bulky offense teams had one of the scariest Pokemon in the game reliably be able to consistently come in threaten out Pokemon and restore its own HP, but without Conkeldurr, there are a lot of Pokemon that, while still great, really struggle more because there are more Pokemon that can threaten to wall them without that one Pokemon to completely bust down walls. Like a Bisharp, for example, can be completely walled by a Melmetal now because it doesn't because Conk isn't in the metagame to be able to 2-ko Melmetal with a Guts and Iron Fist boosted Drain Punch. So bulky offense definitely has taken a hit. And sand teams, like I already said, have completely fallen off. Let's look at the Sand Rush Pokemon real quick. Dracozolt, Dracovish, and Excadrill. All of these three are banned. So, you have Lycanroc, which generally isn't too great. Sandslash, which also generally isn't too great. And Stoutland. Now, Stoutland seems like a great Pokemon for a sand team on paper. It's got Intimidate, which is one of the best abilities in the game. It's got Scrappy, which makes it immune to Intimidate and makes its normal type moves hit ghost type Pokemon. But in its coverage is really nice. It has solid moves other than its normal. It has a ton of solid moves to hit different types, and its stats are even pretty solid as well. Base 85 HP with base 90 defense and special defense. Decent defenses, it can take a hit or two. Base 80 speed is okay, especially in sand. It is one of the, well, actually it's one of the slowest sand rush setters in this current meta, only ahead of Sandslash, but you know what I mean. Base 80 speed and Sand Rush is quite solid, and 110 base attack is quite good. However, the issue comes to its stab moves. Now, before, this wasn't an issue because Stoutland, like pretty much nearly every other Pokemon in the game, had this one little normal type move called Return. However, in Generation 8, Return was taken out and is no longer a move that is possible to obtain on any Pokemon. Now you might be thinking, okay, Stoutland obviously must have some other great normal type move, like Double Edge. That's something that several other normal types get, and it would make sense for Stoutland to get it. It's a big burly dog, and it wouldn't be hard to imagine it charging into you with all its strength. No, it doesn't get Double Edge, but it gets Takedown. Takedown is only 85 accuracy, and that's a huge issue. There's little to no reward for hitting a takedown because of its lower power. Sure, 90 is decent power. Like, that is a Thunderbolt, that is an Ice Beam, which would do a lot of damage, but the thing is, the 85 accuracy just does not mesh well on a move with base power as just solid as 90. So that leaves you with Strength, Retaliate, and Facade. Facade is nice to get past hazards. I mean, not hazards. Facade is nice to get past status, but otherwise is generally very overwhelming in the fact that you have to be statused in order to take advantage of Facade is also really annoying, even if you do get a base 140 power move, otherwise it is also extremely weak. Then you have Retaliate, which only 8 PP is really not great, especially, like, sure, being able to sacrifice a Pokemon, then immediately come in with a 140 power move that Ghost types cannot switch into because of Scrappy, and a Stab, that's great. But only having 8 PP to be able to do that with, especially because a lot of times, like, if you're relying on a move as if you're relying on Retaliate as your only stab, it's not gonna do that great. So its best true option for normal stab is Strength, which has 22 less power than Return, a huge power difference. And because of this, Stoutland is rarely even seen on sand much, and because of the lack of good Sand Rush users, people may think, oh, why not go to Sand Force? And that makes sense. Until you realize that Doug Trio's Arena Trap, or Cantonian Doug Trio's Arena Trap is banned, and two of the Sand Force users are Gigalith and Hippowdon. Two of the other Sand Force users are banned. So the only Pokemon that really can abuse Sand Force are Alolan Dugtrio, the two Pokemon that set Sand up themselves, and not even really Gastrodon, because Gastrodon's main role in the game won't be to abuse Sand, it will be to try to counter Rain while not being vulnerable to knockoff and being able to soak up that move, leaving Alolan Dugtrio as your only really solid option. And I'm not going to say Alolan Dugtrio is bad. With Sand Force, both of its stabs get the Sand Force boost, along with its main coverage in Rock Slide / Stone Edge. Alolan Dugtrio is pretty solid, and I'd say even underrated. However, with only one Pokemon that can truly abuse Sand, that is truly good at abusing Sand, especially because Sand Veil can also be pretty annoying. With only that one Pokemon, it makes Sand a lot worse, especially because when it had Dracozolt, it was completely overwhelming in every way. And you needed to have something, or else get completely ran over by every Sand team, and specifically their Dracozolt, but without it, Sand doesn't really have much to stand up against the rest of the metagame. So what about other weathers? Well, you don't really see much of Rain, surprisingly enough, because with the increased bulk level, even with rain-boosted hydro pumps, it can be extremely difficult to deal with a lot of these special walls in the metagame. Even if you have something like Liquidation, it can, like, a lot of teams are balance teams or stall teams where weather just has a difficult time breaking through in general. The only weather teams aren't even true weather teams. They are hyper offense teams that just lead with Alolan Ninetales to get off an Aurora Veil. Which, yeah, it's nice, but that's not truly weather, that is hyper offense. And so weather has had a huge drop in usage to where I haven't seen any actual weather teams since Sand, or since Sand had Dracozolt, I should say. And yes, hyper offense does exist, but overall it is much worse without the two colossal wall breakers and at the same time stall breakers, because Conkeldurr and Dracozolt were both in the same vein, and along with Pheromosa. And because of the loss of those three Pokemon, offensive teams have a harder time breaking through these massive defensive threats, like Pressure plus Static Zapdos, Flame Body plus Pressure Moltres, Magic Guard plus Unaware Clefable, Mirror Armor plus Pressure plus Unnerved get by things like Pataya Berry Sceptile. Like, offense has really been gutted in a way because the huge defensive buffs that a ton of Pokemon get. And while a lot of Pokemon also get huge offensive buffs, the defensive buffs just often majorly outweigh it. And then you have some Pokemon like Toxapex, which while they are great defensively and will most likely only be seen on defensive teams, they can go on the offensive, especially Toxapex, thanks to Merciless Venoshock, which can actually 2-ko Clefable. So, a lot of offense has just faded from Pokebilities, and it's turned into mostly balance and stall. So what do I think about the current metagame, the balance and stall Pokebilities metagame? I haven't played much of it, but so far, I like it. I haven't come across too many Clefables, surprisingly enough. I am expecting that to change. But this much more patient metagame, this much more defensive metagame, requires you to put more thought into every move instead of just mindlessly blitzing through everything with Bolt Beak or Drain Punch, which is something that I really appreciate. I am one of the few people that will openly admit I like going up against stall teams because they force me to play more patient and they force me to think through every move even more than I would otherwise. And I actually really enjoy that. Do I think stall is healthy for metagame? It depends on if stall is the only viable style or not, which is definitely not the case here. Balance is definitely the second largest play style, but stall and balance aren't the only viable playstyles in the metagame. I mentioned hyper offense before, and while it's taken a hit, it is still viable. Same with just normal offense in general, and same with bulky offense. Same with type spam teams, unless, like, the only type spam team that I'd say really got hurt was the fighting spam teams, because they would normally use Conkeldurr and Pheromosa. However, there are other Pokemon with similar power levels to, specifically unboosted Pheromosa. So yeah, offense is still good. It's just stall and balance have become much better, especially with Zamazenta Crown being unbanned. Now, speaking of Zamazenta Crown, it's normally in Ubers and is the only current Ubers Pokemon that remains unbanned. Magearna was tested and banned. Cinderace, Spectrair, and Urshifu Single Strike were tested at the beginning back in April, but were quick banned after, I think, a few hours. But Zamazenta Crown remained. And do I think Zamazenta Crown should be banned? I personally have not come across a lot of Zamazenta Crown. But what I will say is, the few times I have come across it, it has not been completely overwhelming. It's been annoying with how extraordinarily fast it is at a blazing base 128 speed with wild 145 base defense and special defense, 130 base attack and 92 base HP. Yeah, it's annoying. There's no doubting that. But at least when I've played against Zamazenta Crown, it's not overwhelming. It's not overpowering. And for me, while it is always annoying, it's never too difficult to deal with if I play right. Would I be open to seeing other people's opinions on Zamazenta Crown? Yes. Do I think it is worthy of a suspect test? No. But if the rest of the metagame decides that it is, I have no issue with that. And I will let it proceed. Anyways, guys, this has been Tafflution 77, and I'm out of the house. Bye!